Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, everyone. I hope you're all well, inshallah. So today is a bit different. As you probably felt last time, I think we met, 4 weeks ago. My camera quality was a bit of a disaster. Many people have been telling me I normally do it from my I've got a semi-office upstairs, as you probably saw last time. So the quality wasn't good. I've had other calls in between regarding work and other things. And unfortunately, I don't have the best of technical ability. So alhamdulillah, one of my friends is someone you probably know who used to be with the ISOC. He said to me, look, take this camera for now. So I thought we'd try it out. So inshallah, hopefully it's okay. And do let me know. You can post anything in terms of if there are any issues in terms of the quality and the sound. So going forward from there, so of course you had Imam Abid last, I think 2 weeks ago, and he was talking specifically about death, and of course on the back of the passing of Abdurrahman Dayuk, of course, rahimullah. I know there was a reminder on death, and one of the things I wanted to really touch upon in this particular session, because we said there were going to be three things as part of this Tarbiyyah session. One was going to be tazkiyah, which is the purification of the heart. One was going to be about leadership and about how do we take these values, not secular, but these concepts of values, in particular leadership and others. And then the third segment's about adab and akhlaq and our mannerisms. And these three, to be honest with you, form a very key element of any individual. But more so, it's important for people like those in the ISOCs, those who have positions of leadership, because at the end of the day, these three elements are key, especially when it's regarding overseeing things, being given responsibility, dealing with people, whether they're the normal person or dealing with someone of a high stature. These things are important. So today, what I wanted to touch upon actually was to do with the concept of brotherhood and sisterhood, in particular regarding, more specifically within the ISOC element, and how you deal with your colleagues and how you deal with others. And what I'm going to do today, and unfortunately I can't share it, I wanted to share it on my screen, but with the setup, I'm a bit scared of using it in a different way. There's a book, which I'll probably show you now, if you can see this. It's called Bidayatul Hidayah by Imam al-Ghazali. And in his book, number one, I recommend that everyone gets it. It's in English, I believe, as well. There's a translation. And what he does in this book, he separates between three things. Number one, he talks specifically about the mainly the rituals that we have and how do we make sure that we perform the rituals in the best possible way, whether it's salah, whether it's zakah, whether it's the concept of tawheed. The second part of it is about the amrad al-qalb, in terms of the diseases of the heart. So whether it's ostentation, whether it's rancor, whether it's greed, and it talks about how you identify them and of course how you can look at the cure for that. And then the last part of his book is about adab and about the mannerisms. And it's a really good section. And of course, if we have a chance, we can go through them in some of the later sessions. But the adab that one has with, for example, with Allah Azza wa Jal, the adab has with their parents, which is a very important one, which I do want to cover. Specifically, how do you deal with your parents? Not looking at them with a stern eye, not raising your voice above them. Some very key elements to make sure that we have the utmost adab with our parents. And then you have it with your teachers and with your students. And there's a section in here about the adab with the people that you know, i.e. your friends or those around you. And so before I get into kind of this, of course, Imam al-Ghazali, you hear the name, mashallah, people, some of you will know him. He was known as Hujjatul Islam, the proof of Islam. And he was someone who, they said that, he was one of those to really codify the link between the outward sciences of the Sharia, which is, the concept of fiqh and jurisprudence, and the inner sciences in terms of the concept of the heart, and trying to marry the two. And so his book, as many of you will know, Ihya Ulumuddin, is one of the most famous books, Revival of the Islamic Sciences. And this is a book which, has a lot of benefit. And, people talk about different things, but of course you have Ibn al-Qayyim, Rahimullah, Ibn Taymiyyah, Imam al-Ghazali, Imam al-Haddad. You have, many people who talk about the purification of the heart. But Imam al-Ghazali's stuff, there's something different. Yani when you read it, you really feel something. So I did want to go through this very briefly, touch upon one or two points, and then inshallah we'll try to see if there's any time for any questions or if anyone has anything. I think there's a chat here, so let's see what this person's. All right, Jazakallah khair. Yeah, I mean, the problem is I have it in the Arabic. I can screen share it, but I don't think it'll be much benefit. Maybe next time. But yeah, maybe next time I'll try and be a bit more organized, inshallah. So the first part, what he says, Imam al-Ghazali, is he basically talks about the adab of suhbah, of kind of companionship with others. And what he says is that with regards to your brothers stroke sisters, um, he says that you have two main jobs or roles. The first role, and tatluba awwal shurut as-suhba wa sadaqa, that you know the obligations and what the obligations of this companionship. And more specifically, what he says is that you should not take friendship or befriend someone unless they have these five qualities. And so he mentions the hadith of the Prophet, Al-mar'u ala dini khalili falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil, that the person is upon the deen of his friend. So be aware, be careful of who you take companionship with. So he mentions five things here. Now, I'm going to mention these five. Before I mention, I'm going to ask everyone actually. But he says there's five things that you should really strive to have in a friend. And if they don't have the majority of these things, then be wary of being a friend with them. So I'm going to ask very quickly while people are online, can anyone give me an idea in the chat function? What would be some of the things that you think he'd mention? Just to keep it a bit conversationalist, but let's see. Honesty. Yeah. MashaAllah. Anyone else? Honesty? Loyalty? Yeah. Good vibes. MashaAllah. Yeah, nice way of putting it. Good vibes. True. It might link with the first thing I'm going to say, actually. Taqwa of someone who fears Allah. Jamil. Okay, great. So many of you have good character. Ahsan. That's very good. So I'll tell you the first one. The first one he says, which you might be surprised about, and I'll explain it, is aql, intellect. And what he says here, he says, فَلَا خَيْرَ فِي صُحْبَةِ الْأَحْمَقِ. He says there is no goodness in the companionship of a fool. And now people are going to say, well, does that mean that if I'm not, a doctor or a lawyer, that I shouldn't be, I shouldn't have the friendship with others? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't refer to the intelligence that we refer to in terms of IQ. It is referring more specifically to spiritual intelligence. You could argue it's actually as well an extent emotional intelligence, but let's talk about, the book is called Beginning of Guidance. And you might find it in the PDF actually. If you want to look online, mashallah, you're all at home or wherever you are, you can Google Beginning of Guidance. I think there might be an option to see a free download, or there's a text version, so you might be able to follow. And it's in the third part, just so you know. It's called Asnaf an-Nas wa Adabu Majalisitihim. So the types of people and the way to, and the adab and the manners of dealing with them. So he says the first was aql. So basically what this means is intelligence, i.e. spiritual intelligence. It refers to someone, and aql comes from the word, al-aql, it comes from the word aqala. Aqala means, has two meanings. One is that you tie something. So, the aql is something which, kind of ties and keeps something to. It's not aqada. Aqada is aqidah, which ties. Aql is mainly to kind of keep a hold of something. The other meaning of aql is mana', which is basically to restrain, to habs, to restrain from something. And the scholars say that aql really means is that you restrain yourself from the negative qualities. You restrain yourself from being someone who is indecent, from someone who is impolite, from someone who has, who is poor in their religious affairs. So basically, they're keeping a control of themselves. So they don't do stupid things in the street. They don't speak when they're not supposed to speak. They have a decorum about them, which is a good one, which is in line with the sunnah. So that's the first thing, that you have someone. And he says, look, sometimes you can have a friend who, when he's trying to help you, he harms you. And this is the concept of aql. So someone who is spiritually there. The second one is husnul khuluq. So someone mentioned this before. And he says that do not associate or partner with someone who has a bad character. And he defines here, interestingly enough, he says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي لَا يَمْلِكْ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ وَالشَّهْوَةِ. He is the one who has bad character, is the one who does not hold himself at times of anger and at times of desire. And so, good character is a very big topic, and I think that in itself deserves a separate session. But in summary, good character is, as we know, one of the heaviest things Yawm al-Qiyamah, as per the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. أثقل شيء في الميزان, the most heaviest thing on the Day of Judgment is good character. So he says, have someone of good character. And good character also means that you're there for them. There's a statement by Imam Ali radiallahu anhu, says, Inna akhaka al-haq man kana ma'ak, that your brother is the one who is with you. And وَمَنْ يَضُرُّ نَفْسَهُ لِيَنْفَعَكَ, and who sacrifices himself for you. وَمَنْ إِذَا رَيْبُ الزَّمَانِ صَدَّعَكَ, when the time comes of hardship, then شَتَّتَ فِيكَ شَمْلَهُ لِيَجْمَعَكَ, that he spreads his cloak, he scatters his cloak to cover you. Yani, the good charactered person isn't just thinking about himself, he's thinking about his brothers and sisters. And so, don't think that good character is just smiling. It's that when the time, when someone is struggling, whether it's your brother, whether it's your sister, you're there for them. You pull out all the stops. You go out of your way for them. You walk with them at their time of need. This is what good character is, and that's why they say it's from the best of deeds. And so this is what you want in someone, that you want that in a friend. But also these 5 points that I'm mentioning are also things that you need to have with other people. So don't think of it as a one-way street. It's a two-way thing. The third one is salah. Yani it's not salah as in with the term buta, not prayer, but salah in the sense in terms of someone who stays away from sin, someone who is righteous. And he defines this again. I mean, I'm not going into the whole thing, but he defines it. فَلَا تَصْحَبْ فَاسِقًا مُصِرًا عَلَى مَصِيَةٍ كَبِيرًا, that do not associate someone who is involved in major sins. And this is an important point, that and he mentions here as well, is that when you spend your time with people who sin, and they're doing it openly or they're doing it regularly, then you become desensitized. I remember, if you're in a time of kind of talabul ilm and you're seeking knowledge, and we used to, you just go to the masjid, then you'd go to your class and you'd go home. That was the thing that you only did when you studied. And you'd be doing Quran in the day, and you'd be studying Arabic and Sharia in the evening or whatever. What happens is, after a certain amount of time, when you start to go into the street and you walk in the street, you find that if you see a billboard, you think, what's going on here? Like something which is of a woman or something like that, because you haven't seen it for so long. I had a friend who used to be in Yemen, and he used to stay in, I think it was in Hadramaut, or it might have been Aden, I'm not sure which area. And he said that I hadn't seen someone without a niqab for a very long time. And actually, in Yemen, all women all wear niqab. Even in Sana'a, in places like there, you'll have generally a lot of people wear niqab there. But in his place, which was very traditional, he didn't come across women who didn't show their face at that time. Now, what happens when he came back to the UK? He was just surprised. Not that it's not that it's wrong to show your face. Of course, it's completely fine. But because he was accustomed to that, he became sensitized to the point that, I'm trying to keep my gaze lower. But when he came here, it completely switched. And it's the same with sin. The more that you see sin, the more likely that you become desensitized. And so this is the reason he says that make sure that you keep your heart protected from that. And of course, stay away from people who might cause that. Finally, so two other quick ones. He says, the fourth one is, do not associate with someone who is seeking the dunya. Now, and he calls this فَصُحْبَةُ الْحَرِيصَ عَلَى الدُّنْيَا سَمٌّ قَاتِلٌ, that the accompanying with someone who is really just striving for the dunya is like a poison, a very lethal poison. And what I want to qualify that with is, it doesn't mean that, don't go and work. It doesn't mean go and don't be a dentist, don't go to work 9 to 5, don't do 40, 50-hour weeks. It doesn't mean that. What it means specifically is someone whose whole aim is the dunya. That what they're seeking to is that they've got £4,000 coming in their account, I want to make 5,000. They've got a nice car, I want to get the next car. They're not content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And what happens is, when you're around people like that, when you're around people who are saying, let's get this car, let's go and do this, let's go on holiday all the time, for no benefit, just for the fact that they want to enjoy themselves, then what you find yourself trying to compete. And when you try to compete, it becomes very difficult. And so he advises to try not to be with people who are making you think the dunya is the goal. And that's important. Finally, sidq, as mentioned, honesty. And so, this is a given that we seek with someone who is honesty. And of course, when you think about the Prophet ﷺ, he was the most honest of people, ﷺ, and that's why he was known as the trustworthy one. And that was before he received nubuwwah, prophethood. And so we see from that actually in order to have the right container for prophethood, you needed to have honesty, you needed to be trustworthy. And one thing I'll say, brothers and sisters, and I'll mention this again in a future thing, is one of the main elements of leadership is integrity. There was a guy called John Adair, who's a leadership theorist, very well known. And so he kind of mentioned about 11 or 12 qualities of an effective leader. And one of the first one was integrity. Because if you have integrity and you're trustworthy, then people trust you. And when they trust you, that's only when they follow you. If they don't trust you, they will not follow you. So if you are leading in an ISOC, if you're leading a particular department in the ISOC or whatever you're doing, you need to be at your top of your game in being someone who is honest, someone who says the truth, no matter what, if it's against yourself or against someone else. You say the truth and people will respect you, inshallah, for that. So I have another small section, which is the second section, but is there any question before I carry on? I know I'm rushing a bit, so apologies, but I want to make sure I give you the main parts of this session. So does any question? So I will go on to the next point. So then he says the second kind of thing that you need to consider, should we leave the ones weak in these areas friendless and examples? Okay, so that's a good question. So I suppose it's worth talking about this as well. What he says, what we're saying here, we're not saying that you number one, completely isolate yourself. What this means, and it doesn't mean as well that you don't help those who don't have these particular traits. So for example, if someone is not religiously inclined at all, it doesn't mean you completely leave them. And I want to make that very clear. And that's very important, because actually when we read some of these books, and it's a good point you've mentioned, when we talk about Imam al-Ghazali and people like that, when we read these books, you have to know it in context. One of the obligations that we have is that for our brothers and sisters is that we're there for them, that we guide them. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhawna al munkar. That you, the best of people, who order the good and forbid the evil. Now, if it was a case that you're not going to befriend anyone who does evil, then how are you going to forbid the evil and join the good? So don't take it in a literal sense. What this really is saying is that those friendships which you really deal with closely, those whereby you the ones that you talk to at night, and the ones that you're sharing lots of things with, the ones that you share your secrets with, the one that you're spending a lot of time with, it's referring really to those, that be careful that the ones that you consider really close friends, yani ikhwan wa akhawat, and these ones, then you need to be a bit wary. But that doesn't mean that you avoid people who you might be friends with in class and others. It doesn't mean that if they don't have that, you leave them. What you need to do with those people is to make sure that you call them to Islam, that you call them to good character, but you can befriend them. But if they start backbiting in front of you, if they start calling to sin, then you do have a responsibility to make sure that they don't transgress that. It's not a case that you can say, all right, I'll be your friend and continue sinning. For example, if someone smokes, I used to have friends who smoked as well. Now, I didn't probably say it every time they smoke, but every now and again I say, look, bro, you need to try and quit. You need to try and do this. You don't. It's not a case of black or white that completely you're okay. If you don't quit smoking, I'm not going to be your friend. There's levels, and that comes with experience. It comes with knowing, how much of an impact you're having on people, and maybe that's a separate question we can discuss with. But yeah, don't take it on the face value. We have a responsibility to be there for others, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next stage because I don't want to go more than the 40 minutes allocated. So now, so now the next part is The second part is now, what are the obligations of these people that you're with? Now, he separates these between those people who are your friends and those people who are your acquaintances. Now, I'm not going to go into all of them. So I've got a list here, for example, of those with your friends, about 12, 13. Those your acquaintances, probably another 7, 8. I'm going to choose 5. So if you've got a pen and paper, it's worth writing these 5. It'll probably be useful. Um, so let me just put this to the side. So the first thing I want to mention is that your relationships with people, what are your obligations with them? And there's 5 things I'm going to mention. The first one is that you hide their faults. So you know your friends in your ISOC, in your groups, in your friends, etc., that you try to hide their faults, and you try to keep their secrets. So when they tell you something in secrecy, you keep their secrets. When they have issues, for example, their particular things that they might be doing which are not right, and they're not publicizing them, then you try to keep them quiet and you advise them separately. It's fine, but what you don't do is that you don't degrade them in front of others. And we have a tendency sometimes, that when you're with friends, sometimes you might make fun of others and things like that. Now it's okay, brothers and sisters sometimes who really know each other really well, they will make jokes with each other. I mean, myself and Abid, we're always joking in that way, but I won't do it with everyone, and people will not do it with myself. You have to know the nature of the person that you're dealing with. If they can handle it, they completely take it as a joke, it's fine. To be fair, you can get away with it. You shouldn't do it too much. But what I would say is that there are people out there that they can take it in a negative way, and so you don't want to be someone who makes someone feel bad. You don't want to be someone who is highlighting the sins of someone else. So that's the first thing, the obligation that you have to your brothers and to your sisters. The second one, which is important, وأن يذب عنه في غيبته إذا تعرض لعرضه, which is a really, really important one. كما يذب عن نفسه, that you defend your brother in his absence the same way that you would want to be defended. And I'll tell you a story. I was in a meeting one day, and there were 3 of us, and there was kind of the CEO who was of the charity I was working on. He was walking around me, and we were talking about a very complex issue, and there was someone we were talking about, and I mentioned something. It wasn't backbiting, but I mentioned something which wasn't really right. And there was just us 3, and that person wasn't there. He was somewhere else. The CEO at that time said, "Rehan, you can't say that. That's not right." Right in front of everyone. There were 4 of us there. And he basically put me in my place. And I remember thinking to myself, you get that feeling, when someone, not tells you off, but they kind of show you up in front of other people. For a few seconds, I was like, you know what? Why did he do that? And why did he kind of show me up? And then that feeling of kind of grief and that feeling of ashamedness actually turned to respect. And automatically, within about 5 to 10 seconds, I looked at him and I thought, I respect this guy a lot. And you know why I felt that way? Because I knew that if I wasn't in that room and that someone else was talking about me, that in my absence, if someone said something negative, that he was going to defend my honor. And that is a very important thing, that kama tadinu tudan is a concept in Arabic, that what goes around comes around. And the reality is that you need to defend the honor of your brother. If someone is backbiting someone else in front of you, the correct thing, the Islamic thing, is that you say, no, do not backbite him. And we know the sin of backbiting. And they say that there's a saying where, hatta some said it was a hadith. I don't know whether it's hadith, it's marfu' to the Prophet ﷺ or not. But they say that the sami' has the same sin. The one who hears has the same sin as the one who's backbiting. Because the one who listening didn't actually he didn't refute that person there and then. And so, brothers and sisters, defending the honor of your brother or your sister in their absence is from the Islamic qualities and from the obligations that we have to our brothers and sisters. Number 3 is to forgive them, and for their issues and for their sins. It's similar to kind of hiding the faults, but it's also slightly different. That friends can sometimes fall out. Sometimes friends can say things. And forgiveness is, of course, one of those things with your brother, especially in things like ISOCs, where things get really tense, where things get really difficult. Forgiveness is very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "La tuhibbuna an yaghfira Allahu lakum," that do you not love that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives you? He says, وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا before that. He says, and forgive and pardon. And then he says, أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ, that do you not love that Allah will forgive you? Meaning that have forgiveness and have mercy on other people, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then have mercy on you. So if you forgive the individuals who have done things to you or said bad things to you, then when you do it, then they will forgive you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. And so this is something which is important. And I mentioned in this point, because we have this concept in ISOCs, and we've seen in conferences that things get really hairy when you're doing, for example, an event. It could be anything. It could be an ISOC dinner. Everyone's running around. You've got to get the food ready. Has this person been called? That lighting isn't right. And people get, it gets stressful. And I'm sure that, the ISOC brothers and sisters, those who are leading it gets very stressful. You're dealing with different personalities. You're dealing with different people. And not everyone takes kindly when someone's being ordered around. Do you get my point? So the thing is that, you have to be in a situation whereby at these times you have to keep it, keep it manageable, keep it reasonable. And there's a concept that, I was in a meeting one day with someone in in the corporate world. And actually he said that, this tension, because it's tension, you get tension between people. He said, actually, healthy tension is good. And, he said that what you need in effective teams and effective groups is that it's not a case that, everyone is just doing what they want and you say, please, can you do this? And the other person says, no, I can't. Really, really, sometimes it gets a bit hairy, but he calls this healthy tension, in that we're not talking about something which is personal. When someone gets ordered to do something, brother, can you arrange this? Sister, can you sort that out? If they're the Emir, or they're someone who's in charge of a particular thing, or even if they're not the Emir, let's say they've just been in charge of something else, they could be even talking to the Emir and ordering them to do something. The concept of healthy tension means that you don't take things personally, but there's a tension there that, we need to get to this thing. We need 500 people to attend this event. We need to make sure that it stays on time. Sometimes you have to raise your voice. Sometimes you have to give a push and give them extra encouragement. Sometimes you have to do certain things. And you can't always be, really soft about it. And so the effective teams are those who embrace healthy tension. They realize that the goal is to achieve this result. Anything that we're going through is not personal, it's purely professional. And in that way, you find that those teams, they do that extra 15, 20% better. But there are times where people will struggle, that people will feel a bit bad. But that's where the point, you have to have that tasamuh, and you have to have that easygoing and that forgiveness with them as well, to get through that. Number 4, brothers and sisters, before we end, inshallah. And he says, Imam al-Ghazali, وَأَنْ يَدْعُ لَهُ فِي خَلْوَتِهِ فِي حَيَاتِهِ وَبَعْدَ مَمَاتِهِ. That you make dua for that person, for your brother, for your sister, in their when you're in isolation or by yourself, during their life and after they have passed away. And this, brothers and sisters, this is from the sunnah of the companions. It's narrated that Abu Darda radiallahu anh, they said when he used to do tahajjud, when he was in sujood, in sajda, they said that he would say about himself that I would make dua for 70 of my companions. And he said I would do that in word, name by name. And Abu Darda, as we know, from the elite of the companions. And so, brothers and sisters, one of the things that I found, and this is one of the advice of the mashayikh, of the teachers, of our pious elders and scholars. They say that, when you have issues, you might have an issue with someone, you have a bit of, you might not get on with someone, right? They might have said something to you, they might have upset you, and you know them, right? They're a friend of yours or someone that you might not even know. And what happens is, if you don't deal with it, it starts to surface in the heart. It starts to bubble up. You know what that person said about me. And then when you meet them again, they say something or do something that you don't like, right? And it starts to build up. And the ulama said that, one of the best ways to remove this is that when you have an issue with someone, that you go in the middle of the night and you make sincere dua for that person. It's a sincere dua, whether it's in tahajjud or whatever, you make a sincere dua for them. I'm telling you by experience, and I'm telling you that, this is from the advices of our pious kind of ulama is that it removes it from your heart. You remove that hiqd and it removes that anger and hatred that you will have for them. Not just talking about for people that you don't like. This is for your brothers, your sisters, those in your eye socks. All these names on here, that those you know, ideally, and I'm not saying I do it myself for everyone, but I'm saying that ideally that you make dua for them. Because actually you're all in this together. You're not part of the ISOC because you want to make more money. You're not part of the ISOC because you want to kind of establish dominance of a particular region. You're not part of the ISOC because you want to, start reading books. You're part of the ISOC because you want to spread Islam. You want the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to be there. You want people to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord of the worlds, not just yourselves, but those around you. You want to live a life which is pleasing to Allah. And so actually that brotherhood that you have and the sisterhood you have in the ISOC between you all is from the strongest of bonds. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed the brothers, the believers are brothers. And innama in Arabic is a form of hasr, it's a form of specification, meaning that indeed the believers are nothing but brothers, or the believers are nothing but sisters, right? And so the bond that you have amongst yourselves as brothers and sisters is actually stronger than the blood bond, because actually it's a bond based on tawheed, on the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as opposed to based on the family thing. So I advise myself and yourselves to make dua for your brothers and sisters in prayer. The final thing, brothers and sisters, and I'll end on this. There's many things I could say, but I want to mention this. The final thing, he says, فَيَجِبُ أَنْ لَا تَسْتَصْغِرْ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدًا فَإِنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي لَعَلَّهُ خَيْرٌ مِنْكَ. He says, and do not belittle those around you that you know at the slightest, for you do not know which of those people are better or who is better than you. And this is a concept that I want to end on, and I suppose this will be something maybe we'll touch upon if we have another session, is the concept that do not ever think that you're better than anyone. And this is more specifically to people who are in leadership. The reason being with the ISOCs or whoever, because the moment you take on leadership, there comes a point whereby you're responsible, and all the good things that happen, you kind of take the credit. Anyone who does anything, whether it's you're doing a class, whether you're doing a video, whether you're leading a sports team or whatever, generally the one who's at the front is the leader. They take the flak, but they also take the credit. And also they're responsible for overseeing and for ra'iyah and for making sure that they oversee the people and what they're doing. And so it can happen that when you're in positions of leadership, and even if you're a part of an ISOC compared to the general person who's not part of an ISOC, there are different levels. Now, the thing is that when you go through that time, it can be a case that, you know what, maybe, yeah, I'm part of the ISOC, I'm a bit better than that person. Or I might pray more tahajjud, I'm better than that person. I pray 5 times a day. I don't know if they pray 5 times a day, I'm better than that person. And one thing is that, as we know, that the subhanahu wa ta'ala, that anyone who's an atom's way to pride or arrogance, they will not enter Jannah. We know that from the many hadith. And so, brothers and sisters, do not think you're ever better than anyone. In fact, the best way to be is that you are not, you don't know the state of anyone else, but you know your own sins. And some of the scholars said, Imam Ghazali, they said that actually those who are younger than you should think this way. Anyone younger than you, they're probably better than you because they've done less sin, because they've had less time to do sin. And those who are older than you, they're probably better than you for many reasons, primarily because they could have more forgiveness, or that they have worshipped Allah more than you. But there's always going to be people who are better than you. And so the moment you start to think of yourself that, you know what, in the eyes of Allah, I am completely dependent upon you. There's a saying that Allah is with the brokenhearted. Yani those people who actually believe that, you know what, I will not enter Jannah unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala envelops me in his mercy. And this is from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Sahaba said to him, even yourself, Ya Rasulullah, he said, even myself, illa an yataghammadini Allah bi rahmati, except unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala envelops me in his rahmah. So if that's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then what about ourselves? We're complete full of sin. We sin day and night, major, minor. And so, brothers and sisters, when thinking about other people, think about yourself. I'm not saying get depressed about it. I'm not saying that, get into a state of depression that I'm worthless. No, I'm saying that in the eyes of Allah, don't think that you're better, but you should have a good countenance. You should go out. You should be happy-go-lucky. You should be good with people. You should smile. No doubt about it. But know that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who will decide whether your sins are big enough or whether your deeds will be accepted. And that's an important state when dealing with people around you, that you don't think that you're better than other people. And that way you will maintain humility with those around you, inshallah. Tayyib. So I'm going to quickly answer this final question. This last question about the camera, Habibi, the reality is I have no idea. Because the thing is that Dad gave it to me. So I don't know. I hope it's a compliment. I hope it's worked out okay. But inshallah, let's hope. So finally, Maryam's thing, she said, if someone treats you badly and figure it's acceptable to avoid the interaction, you say Islam, but avoid working to inspire and figure there's a bit of nuance to this question, and I'll end on this question. If someone treats you badly and you forgive them, and they have sought forgiveness and they've recognized, they've made a mistake, and they're rectifying it and they're trying to make themselves better and they acknowledge it, then I would say that it's better that you keep the interaction with them, because of course everyone changes, everyone has their moments. And so, the same way that we would want people to give us a second chance, we should be given a second chance. However, there are certain people that actually you just don't get on with. They say al-arwah junud. They say the souls are like conscripted soldiers, right? There's some people you just don't get on with. That's the reality. And some people that you have a natural inclination to. And you know this from experience. Everyone has that with certain people. If you feel that someone has sought forgiveness and then what they've found is that they're not actually, they don't have a good interaction with them, but they're affecting your mood, they're affecting your ability because they might be saying things which upset you and things like that, then I would say that, you can keep a distance if you feel it is for the betterment of your religious, for your religious character. But you would have to make a judgment call on that. That's for the individual to make that call, inshallah ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, I think I've gone on long enough. I think that's a good 40 minutes. I hope that was beneficial. I know it's slightly different from last time. Again, I would suggest that please do give any feedback to Brother Aziz and to the other committee members, whether it's Isa, whoever. I do want to get some feedback because, of course, this is we're just testing this out in terms of how we're doing this Tarbiyyah session. And it's good to know that what works, what doesn't work, what do people want to cover. If there is particular things that people want to cover, then it's important. I didn't really want to make it just a dars. The whole point of all of this was to make it interactive. And we did have a plan that, we were only supposed to speak 10, 15 minutes and make it more of a conversational thing. But because of COVID, of course, things have changed. Please do give your feedback, inshallah, negative or positive, it doesn't matter, inshallah. We want to improve things. And of course, the main thing is that we become closer to Allah and His Prophet ﷺ in our dealings with others and other people. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He accepts from us, inshallah ta'ala. Are you okay for us to upload the word and only give? Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind if that's not a problem, inshallah. Tayyib, I'm going to leave it there. If that's okay, I'll log off and try to work this out. But yeah, if anyone has anything, then they can get in touch with Aziz. You can give my details or whatever, inshallah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.
Barakallah feek, Shaykh, Jazakallah khair. Once again, a very pertinent reminder. And now that this beautiful nasih has reached us, we are now obligated to strive and to work on it, inshallah. And inshallah, we'll see the blessings and the barakah of that in our work, inshallah. So again, Barakallah feek, Shaykh, Jazakallah khair.
I'll leave you to it, inshallah. Let you carry on. Jazakumullah khair, everyone. Take care, yeah?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
ريض يا الطارش يلم عنا خط بكتابك بترحيب